Welcome, everybody, to the Podcast Answers podcast. That's right. It's another week, another episode. If you've never heard of us before, we help people start and grow their podcast, answering any podcast questions along the way. So, guys, we would love to answer any questions that you have. So if you've got questions, make sure that you type them in the chat if you're listening live. If you're not listening live, why not? Guys, we do this episode every week. We do this show every week. And we record live, and we have a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do live. So join us every week. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@podcastanswers. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the ideal length for your podcast episodes. What are the ideal length for your podcast episodes? Is there an ideal length for your podcast episode? We're going to find out. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, let's get into that. So there is really no ideal podcast episode length. It all depends on a few factors: content format and audience preference. So that's really what it boils down to: content format and audience preference. And so there's a couple different sides. Again, you can have, the nice thing about podcasts is you can do whatever you want, right? There's no, I mean, yes, legally you're going to have you may have ramifications if you slander somebody, but there's not going to be any ramifications on a short episode or a long episode. It's all preference, and it's all what you want to do, because you are the podcast host. So if you want to have a bite-sized episode or a mid-length episode or a long-form episode, you can do that. But there are a few things to take into consideration. So bite-sized episodes. What do I mean by bite-sized episodes? So these are typically shorter episodes ranging from a few minutes to somewhere around 20 minutes. They work well for like tips and tricks types of shows, kind of like this one. So this one, if you've noticed, it's between 8, 12, 15 minutes. Kind of just depends on what kind of content that I have to put forward that day. But it's fairly short. The other one that's kind of short like that is Pod News. Pod News is 2 to 3 minutes every day. That's a daily podcast, but it's really short. And the nice thing about that is they're easy to work in to your content schedule. So your listeners are going to kind of format you into where they fit, where life fits for them. A lot of times people listen on their drive to work, drive from work, when they're doing dishes, things like that. And a lot of times those chunks of time are fairly small, between a few minutes to 20 minutes. And so with bite-sized episodes, it's really easy to fit your podcast into their life, because they may have only a few minutes each day to listen to you. And so bite-sized episodes work really well for those type of shows. Yes. So the next type of episode is a mid-length episode. And these episodes typically fall within the 20 minutes to 45-minute range. They allow for more in-depth conversations and discussions, like interviewing and storytelling. This is a good length for those type of shows because it allows you to get all of your content out, and it's not so long that people have to listen in more than one setting. Because a lot of times if you have to listen in more than one setting, people are either not going to listen to the whole thing, or they're just going to forget about it and go to something different. And so it may be a while before they get back to your episode. And then if your episodes start to stack up because they're so long, they could delete them. They could not listen to the whole thing, just because it's really easy to get behind. And if you feel like you're behind, you're going to go ahead and try to shortcut that somewhere. And so you're going to probably delete some of your older episodes. I do that. I've done that. If I'm gone for a week and I don't have a lot of time to do my normal podcast listening schedule routine, a lot of times I just go, okay, it's out. I'm out because I can't listen to all of that content. So mid-length episodes, again, those are the 20 to 45 minute range, and those are allow for a lot of in-depth conversation, but interviews, but not too long. And so the thing you have to remember about this is with a mid-length one, you need to get into your show fairly quickly, because if you're going to be interviewing somebody, it could take a lot longer than the 20 to 45 minutes that you have interviewing. And so you don't want to waste 10 minutes talking banter in the beginning of your show with your co-host, because you don't want, because you'll get all of that, you'll waste half of your episode with listening to that. So we don't want to do that. So then the last thing is long form episodes. And these are they exceed the 45-minute mark. They can extend up to hours. So long form podcasts, those I'm thinking shows like Joe Rogan Experience, the No Agenda podcast, things like that can range long, that can range a long way time, and those can be hours long. And so these are really good though for interview-based podcasts that dive into, or something that dives into really complex subjects that can take a long time to bring out the content in those episodes. These can be good for sometimes when a story just doesn't fit into a small podcast episode, because you can't get it. Sometimes, some podcasts episodes that I've recorded, the story that I'm talking about or the person that I'm interviewing, their story can't fit in 20 to 45 minutes. No matter how hard you try, you just can't do that. So some of the downfalls though of the long form content podcast is people may not listen to your whole show because they listen while they're driving, or their drive is just not that long. If you have a show that has many topics though, what you can do is you can make use of the chapters. And this is where I would say is a good thing to do, because if you have chapters and you bounce from topic to topic to topic, it's good to put chapters in your podcast. And I can talk about chapters on another episode, how to do that, and show you guys an example. But the nice thing about chapters is then in some podcast apps, it allows you to skip to that point. So let's say you're not interested in the first 25 minutes of topics, and that may be how to grow corn, and you don't grow corn. And so you can skip to a different part of the episode talking about growing beans because you grow beans. And so that's one of the things I would say take advantage of. If you're going to do a long form show, definitely put in the chapter markers in there, because it's something that allows your listeners to go back and listen to just the parts that they need if they're not going to fit into a small spot like that. So guys, remember the content and engagement level are crucial factors though, because it is important to prioritize, quality over length. If you're not don't try to just ramble on because your format is a 45-minute show. In this episode, for me, this is probably going to be about 10 to 15 minutes. And sure, I could make it into 45 minutes, but it would be really, really long. So I don't think that you want to do that. So remember quality, prioritize that over length to, ensure that your duration aligns with your audience's preferences and expectations. I would say regularly assess your listener feedback, and analytics can help gauge your ideal length too, because you may have your listeners saying, we don't want the long episodes, we really don't like them, or especially if you normally do a long episode and you give them a short one and they go, hey, I like that. It fits better into my show. So my way I listen to podcasts. So guys, definitely make sure that you're always assessing your listener feedback and analytics too, because you can definitely get some analytics from Apple Podcasts that will tell you, people are dropping off 20 to 45 minutes, but people are constantly dropping off at that 20-minute mark. That's kind of your ideal length too. So, while not required for podcasting, because you can do it however you want, it is helpful to keep your episodes roughly the same length every time. Your audience builds you into their schedule. And if 1 week you're 10 minutes and the rest you're 90, people are going to have a tough time fitting that into their schedule because they're used to a certain amount of time, but then next week it's really long. So you can do what you want because this is your show and you are the producer of the show. There's no 30-minute marks like there is in television. You can do it how you want. But if you're going to be doing a 30-minute show, be consistent in your 30-minute show. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly 30 minutes on the dot. It can be 29, 28, 27, 30, whatever, but roughly the same. So that way people know what to expect every time you drop an episode. That way they're not having to try and fit you into their schedule, because if they have to work to fit you into the schedule, they're going to drop you like a hot potato and they're going to not be listening to your podcast anymore. So guys, definitely get into a rhythm of trying to get your episodes roughly the same length every time you go record an episode. Also, another good idea too is if you have a mid-length show and you have a great interview. Let's say, you have an hour and a half interview, but your mid-length show normally goes 45 minutes. So what you can do is you can actually either you can cut out and make a normal episode, so make it 45 minutes, and then do a bonus episode where an uncut version like they do with the movies. You see this all the time. Uncut, raw, unedited, or the director's version, something that's going to be longer than normal, but it's going to be great content. So you can give them that bonus episode where you're saying, hey guys, this didn't quite fit all into our normal format of our show, but here's the long interview of, as a separate bonus. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want, but if you want more content from this interviewee, check out this bonus episode. Or what you can do too is you can cut it in half, release the second half as a second episode. So a second normal episode. So you can say, hey guys, this is a great conversation. We're going to continue this on the next episode, and then just continue on like that. You can do that after the fact, like after your podcast is done. You can edit it, rip it, cut it down, say your outro, and say, hey, we're going to do this again. Even after the interview, you don't have to do that during the interview, and then you can start a new episode, introduce it, and say, hey, if you've not listened to this, previous guest part 1, go back and listen to that first, because this is a continuation of that, and you want to definitely hear the conversation that we had the previous week. So, I would say, guys, a challenge for this week is for you to decide what length you want your podcast to be. If you have not started your show yet, look at your topics and kind of see how long you think your show might be, because your topics might be, if you have already started your show and established your show, take a look and see what your audience likes. Ask them. You can look at Apple Podcast stats and see when people drop off of your show. You can kind of see how long they're listening. Maybe it is time to reformat your show. Maybe it's time to come in, not necessarily branding or the way that you do the show, but your format, your length. Maybe it's time to take your hour and a half podcast down to 20 minutes to 30 minutes, because your people are going to listen to that more and be more likely to finish your episode. So guys, we want to thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions about podcasting that I can answer, please go to podcastanswers.com/contact and ask. I would be happy to make an episode about it. Or if you need help with your podcast, I'm available for one-on-one consulting, editing, pretty much whatever you need help with in podcasting, I'm available for. So with that, go ahead and go to podcastanswers.com/contact, guys, and have a great week.